To understand the sheer audacity of the 1969 Dodge Dart GTS 440, you have to look past the sheet metal and into the soul of a Detroit that no longer exists. In the late 60s, the automotive world was divided. You had the massive, high-status muscle cars like the Charger and the GTO that hogged the spotlight, and then you had the humble, sensible compacts like the Dodge Dart. They were never meant to cross paths. But for one glorious, tire-smoking year, Dodge decided to stop being sensible. They took their smallest platform and shoved their largest production V8 into it, creating a vehicle that wasn't just a car, it was a rolling middle finger to the laws of physics. This wasn't just an engine swap, it was a factory-sanctioned act of rebellion. The M-Code Dart, as it's known by the Mopar faithful, was a vehicle that shouldn't have been able to steer, shouldn't have been able to stop, and, according to Chrysler's own engineering standards, shouldn't have been built at all. Yet, here it was, a 375 horsepower monster hiding in the body of a car your aunt might use for grocery shopping. But here's where it gets crazy. Dodge didn't even build these cars on their own assembly line. They knew the project was too volatile for the standard production flow. In 1969, the Dodge Dart was built on the A-body platform. It was a narrow, lightweight chassis designed for fuel economy and ease of use. It was never intended to house the massive 440 cubic inch RB big block. When the engineers first looked at the project, the math simply didn't add up. The 440 Magnum was wide, physically wider than the engine bay's frame rails. There was no room for a steering box, no room for a brake booster, and absolutely no room for traditional exhaust manifolds. It was an engineering jigsaw puzzle where the pieces were twice the size of the box. The project was almost killed before it started because it was an assembly line nightmare. Dodge realized they couldn't build it in-house without slowing down the entire factory to a crawl. But the demand from the streets was too loud to ignore. The solution was radical. Dodge would build the Darts as partially finished units and ship them across town to Hurst Performance in Michigan. Most people miss this part. The M-Code Dart is actually a hand-finished, coach-built muscle car. Hurst mechanics had to manually clear the engine bays, using techniques that were more akin to heavy-duty blacksmithing than modern automotive assembly. And that's when things went wrong for the competition. By outsourcing the work, Dodge created a loophole. They were able to offer a car that bypassed the usual corporate red tape regarding safety and comfort. They didn't care if the car was hard to drive, they only cared that it was the fastest thing on the block. But how do you actually fit a big block into a space meant for a six-cylinder? You do it by sacrificing everything else. We can't talk about the 440 Dart without mentioning Mr. Norm Krauss and his legendary Grand Spalding Dodge dealership in Chicago. Norm was the Steve Jobs of the performance world. He knew his customers didn't want sensible, they wanted to win races on Friday night. In 1967 and 1968, Norm had already been stuffing 383 and 440 engines into Darts through his own service department, proving to the suits in Highland Park that the chassis could handle the heat. Dodge saw what Mr. Norm was doing and realized they were leaving money on the table. They took his blueprint and turned it into the factory M-Code for 1969. But even with factory backing, the car remained a fringe machine. It was never advertised in mainstream magazines. You had to be in the know to order one. It was the ultimate if you know car of the 1960s. But wait, there's a catch. Because Mr. Norm had been doing this for years, the factory-built 1969 models had to meet a higher standard of durability. This led to a very specific set of hardware that makes the M-Code a nightmare to restore today. If you find one with the wrong parts, you're looking at a five-figure mistake just to get the correct exhaust setup. Let's talk about what was actually under that twin-scooped hood. The 440 Magnum was the crown jewel in the Chrysler line, second only to the legendary Hemi. In the Dart, it was rated at 375 horsepower and a staggering 480 pound-feet of torque. In a car that weighed roughly 3,200 pounds, that meant you had a power-to-weight ratio that could rival a modern supercar. To handle that much grunt, Dodge made the 727 TorqueFlite automatic transmission mandatory. You couldn't get a 4-speed manual in the 440 Dart because, frankly, the chassis couldn't handle the shock of a clutch dump with that much torque. it would have twisted the frame like a pretzel. It also came with a heavy-duty 8.75-inch rear axle and beefed-up suspension. But here is the part that surprises most people. Despite all that power, the car came with tiny 14-inch wheels. Imagine trying to put nearly 500 pound-feet of torque through tires that were barely wider than what you'd find on a modern commuter car. The result was a car that didn't just accelerate, it performed a violent smoke-filled dance every time you touched the gas. It was a car that required a delicate touch, which is ironic considering it was built like a sledgehammer. In 1969, the American street racing scene was at its absolute peak. In Detroit, Woodward Avenue was the unofficial testing ground for the Big Three. In Southern California, it was Van Nuys Boulevard. In every city in America, there was a strip where reputations were made and lost. The Dart GTS 440 was the ultimate weapon for these environments because it looked like a sleeper. While the guys in the Chargers and Roadrunners were getting all the attention and the police scrutiny, the Dart owner sat quietly at the light. The Dart didn't have the air-grabber scoops or the loud beep-beep horn. It was a sleeper in the truest sense of the word. The 1969 Dart GTS 440 was the ultimate underdog, a blue-collar sleeper that humbled elite show cars. But that dominance came with a catch. Because the massive engine took up every inch of the engine bay, there was no room for power steering or power brakes. It was incredibly nose-heavy, earning the nickname the freight train because it only wanted to go in one direction, straight. Handling it was like stirring wet concrete, and without experienced hands, this 375 horsepower beast would put you in a ditch before you finished your first gear pull. By 1970, the party was over. Insurance companies flagged the light car big engine formula as high risk, sending premiums skyrocketing. Simultaneously, Chrysler shifted its focus to the new Challenger and Cuda. The M-Code Dart became a one-year-only phenomenon, dying not because it was slow, but because it was too effective, an embarrassment to expensive rivals and a headache for insurers. It was a shooting star that burned out exactly when it was supposed to. Today, finding one of the original 640 units is a holy grail quest for collectors. These aren't just darts, they are pieces of outlaw history. However, the real secret is that the most valuable part isn't the engine, it's the exhaust manifolds. These Hurst-specific M-Code logs were a one-year-only design, and an original set today can cost more than an entire used car. The 1969 440 Dart remains the high watermark of the sleeper era, a hand-built, street-legal dragster. Would you take this classic A-body or a modern equivalent today? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more legends from the Golden Age. I'll see you at the next green light.